Hey guys, how you doing? Just wanted to check in, let you know I'm not gone. Just been super busy. Haven't been doing anything that's really channel oriented that I think you guys would really care to know about. But here's a quick little update on what I've got going on. So I picked up a couple games lately. Nothing super flashy. Picked up this game here, Side Effects. Grabbed it at Barnes & Noble's. Thought it looked kind of funny. It's sort of packaged to look almost like a prescription or some kind of like a little over-the-counter drug box that you'd get from a pharmacy. The idea is that basically every player starts with a bunch of different mental maladies, and they're trying to resolve them by playing different therapeutics and pharmaceuticals over them. Other players are trying to screw you by throwing more mental disorders onto you. And you can have things like suicidal thoughts and mental breakdowns and panic attacks and things like that. Kind of a silly game, probably borderline offensive to some people, depending on who you are. But I tend to look at games as games and not get offended by them. I liked it because it was for 2 to 8 players, and it says it only takes 10 to 30 minutes to play, which I've actually broken it out and taken a look at the cards, and I believe that. I think it's probably a 10 to 30 minute game depending on how many people you have, so it's a good little group game, small box type thing. I also picked up Furnace the other day. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but this was actually a game that they were demoing last year at Gen Con, and it looked cool, but I couldn't really get a grasp at it from just wandering past the booth. I should say I couldn't get a grasp on it from wandering past the booth, and so we didn't pick up a copy. I didn't get to demo a copy. I've since watched the Shut Up and Sit Down review on the game. I think it looks interesting. For some reason, I couldn't get it out of my head. It's just like, it's a game that I feel like I would like. For some reason, it feels like it's going to be Splendor meets Brass Birmingham. And I say that having not yet played Brass Birmingham, although I have now watched a second tutorial video, and I feel like I totally get the game now. My take on that, if you guys are curious why I didn't get it the first time and why I think I got it with this different tutorial, and I'm not going to cite videos because I don't want to say like this guy did a better review or tutorial than that guy. I feel like that's not fair. But the second tutorial that I watched approached teaching the game from a much more victory points oriented perspective. And so as he was going through teaching the game, he was explaining, and you would do this because it scores victory points, or to get victory points using this mechanic, you would do this. And so it sort of like made all of the pieces of the game make sense as he was going through teaching it, as opposed to trying to keep all of the different minutia and like complex mechanics sort of like locked in place in your head in hopes that when you get to the end of the tutorial, it'll sort of be explained to you why you were doing all those things to score victory points, which was sort of how the first video that we watched approached it, and which is why I think I was having such a hard time grasping it, because I couldn't understand why I was doing any of the things that I was being told I could do. It all just seemed pointless. This tutorial actually was like, you're doing it because of this. You're trying to achieve this because it will cause X and Y to happen. So just a different approach that worked better for me. I feel like I could play Brass Birmingham now. So anyways, picked up Side Effects and Furnace. Learned how to play Brass Birmingham more effectively. Bought a new game controller. I don't know if I mentioned it on this channel or another channel, but I smashed my last controller because I was trying to stream Borderlands 2 with my wife, and my very expensive, well, expensive for a controller. Controllers used to be cheap. I don't know if you kids know this, but $70 for, a Bluetooth official Xbox One Frost White controller that wasn't even 3 months old just started randomly disconnecting from my PC, and no matter what I did troubleshooting wise, and I'm a pretty tech savvy person, I kind of do it for a living, it would not hold a connection to my system, and so it got whipped into a wall and shattered into a million pieces. So I picked up this one, and it's pink and yellow, and it's called Pink Lemonade, and it's by Power A, and happy about that. It was like 37, 38 bucks. Good stuff there. From there, I'm also planning on running an RPG. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, we are going to start with D&D. We are going to sort of open it up to whatever people want to do, because I don't think I could stomach running vanilla D&D. I don't really like running D&D at all, as I've mentioned numerous times, just I've run it so much, and to me it's a little too plain at this point, and I knowing what else is out there, I want to run what else is out there, but people are familiar with D&D, and if that makes it easier to get us in sort of like the RPG rhythm, then cool, we'll do some D&D, and then maybe we can move on from there. But I wanted to do D&D my way, so like I mentioned again in a recent video, I'm using ICRPG, which is Index Card RPG, which is a D20 system/modding system that allows you to either play certain D20 campaigns or play within certain D20 settings that the ICRPG system developed, or you can apply the ICRPG system to other D20 games. I don't know how well it would work with, every D20 game across the board, because some are a little more unique in their mechanics, but when it comes to something like Pathfinder or D&D, it seems like it would apply itself very easily. And so I've sort of not cherry-picked, but taken almost all of the suggested sort of alternative methods or mods that ICRPG had to offer. I picked up the entire core book for $14 or something like that as a PDF, and it's been great. I've really enjoyed reading through it. It's almost like a more advanced or a different take on a system like Fate Core, where it's this very sort of blank sheet that you can work with. It's like, here's a list of very malleable mechanics that you can make work for any kind of system or setting or game, or you can modify mechanics in other games that you find unnecessarily complex or bogged down with tedious, systems that don't actually benefit gameplay in any way. You can strip that stuff away and replace it with these sort of nice streamlined mods that ICRPG has. And so I've been working on how I want to do that with this D&D campaign, and I came up with something really nice. I took their character sheet for ICRPG. I learned how to use that, how sort of like a D&D character sheet would convert into one of those character sheets, which has been a very eye-opening process, because I've always felt that a lot of the stuff in D&D that I find tedious, I mean, D&D, I hate to keep crapping on D&D. It's like the grandfather of RPGs, and I don't mean to. But D&D to me is nothing special other than that it's the original RPG, which is something very special. But it's just, it doesn't stand up in the face of like other alternatives to me nowadays. Like maybe I've just overplayed it, whatever. It's like, you get tired of checkers and you want to move on to something bigger, right? The reason that we play board games like this is because we all played Monopoly one time too many, and we're like, this game is stupid, there have to be better games. And then we found board games like this and we went, oh, there are much better games. I'm never playing Monopoly again. And that's kind of like where I'm at with D&D. But anywho, the things that I find most obnoxious about D&D is that there are these systems that I don't know anyone that uses, and it seems like if you were to actually follow them to the letter as they're written in the book, things like weight management and capacity and the way that certain spells have to be concentrated upon, but not in like an RPG like role-playing kind of way where you just have to sort of like role play that you're concentrating on it, but there's actually really like complex minutia as far as the rules go around concentration and how it can be broken and what does and doesn't break concentration and what kind of actions you can take while concentrating on a larger action, but they don't break your concentration. It seems unnecessarily tedious. And so going through the ICRPG system and learning all the different sort of mods that they've come up with strips all of that stuff away and lets D&D sort of play as this nice zippy streamlined fantasy system that I feel like lends itself better to having a good time and actually focusing on role playing, which is something that not a rules light, but maybe a rules light-ish RPG lends itself well to. Something like, again, Fate Core, where the mechanics don't get in the way of the role playing. The game is about the role playing. The mechanics are just there to kind of prop it up a little bit when the time comes to roll some dice. It doesn't get in the way of the fun. And I feel like D&D as it's written, D&D 5th edition anyways, is what I'm referring to throughout this video, in case you didn't know. As it's written in the book, if you were to just play it as written, I feel like it does get in its own way in a lot of spots. And I feel like the mods that ICRPG has to offer fixes that in a lot of ways. So anyways, another thing, because I don't feel like having a million books out in front of me and because I want my players to have access to as much different material as they want, we use, and I have demos on how to set it up on this channel, we use Aurora Builder, which is a great D&D 5th edition aggregator. You have to do a little bit of hackery to make it work, but go watch my videos. And even now the channel has changed, the page has changed, I should say. If you go to it, it actually doesn't look like you can get the mod packs anymore. Like you can download all the materials. It looks like they're deleted, but they're not. You kind of have to play with the button F11 and go find addresses and then copy paste those. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but do that and you'll still be able to get all of the content. They won't be adding new content going forward because I think they received an official cease and desist from Wizards of the Coast. And I'm sure they could dance around that for a little bit longer if they wanted to, but they probably don't want to. So But you can still go get all the stuff. I would recommend you do it now while you can, if you do ever plan on running D&D 5th edition between now and when 6th comes out, which probably won't be too long from now. And then Aurora Builder will probably just fizzle away until somebody makes a new amazing aggregator for free. But anyways, I'm letting them use Aurora Builder. So rather than me go out and buy the 36 books that I would need to be able to run all of those expansions and modules and additional content, I want to make it so that it doesn't matter. So basically, again, using ICRPG, I built myself a GM screen that fits perfectly onto this tablet that I'm going to be using, specifically, and normally I wouldn't, but specifically because it'll make it easy for me to look things up on the fly if I don't know what they are, because I don't have all the books for all the modules, and I'm going to sort of care less about whether we are being super accurate to the module. Again, I'm trying to focus on having my players roleplay as opposed to worry about dice mechanics or the combination of certain rules as they're written in the book mixing together and coming out with either some asinine effect that ruins the game or some overpowered effect that ruins the game. So that being said, made myself a little character sheet, not a character sheet, a GM screen here. Got a little fancy with it. Made it kind of look like crinkled paper. But that's all of this is all of the mods that I need and sort of all of the instructions that I need to run the game using the ICRPG method. And the fact that it's one sheet and fills up the screen nice and neat, and I can swipe back and forth between this and their character sheets, and I can grab this little stylus off the top. This is an old Samsung tablet, and I can take, notes on the screen, and I can create my own little maps and keep track of what's going on and health and hit points and stuff like that. And then I have this one-page GM screen. Really happy with that. And then on top of that, I do want to use some tabletop visuals. I don't necessarily want to go full map, full, laminated grid with wet erase markers and, or printing out things or using terrain or tons of miniatures. I don't want to go that route because I'm trying not to bloat this process. It's like, if I have to run D&D, I want it to be smooth. And so I'm trying to keep everything nice and smooth. And so because I do want to have some tabletop presence as far as visuals go, I had the idea to grab from my local Barnes & Nobles again, these 0 to 5 challenge rating D&D cards, these monster cards. I'm sure you've seen these around. It's an odd selection, I'll tell you that. The types of stuff that you would generally have in a starting campaign for level 0 characters going up to level 5, like elves and humans and thieves and thugs and warlords and bartenders and stuff like that. None of that's really in here. You just get a lot of really bizarre creatures that honestly seem a little underranked as far as challenge rating goes. Things that are really scenario specific that you would probably never really put unless you were running a specific campaign or a specific module that pulled that type of creature in. But again, whatever, it's D&D, it's not my thing. So because I want to have these and use these as sort of a visual, even though I won't really be using the information on the back of the cards, for example, this is Orc Eye of Grumsh. If you look at that card right there, I don't know if it's focusing on the card or my face, and I apologize if it's my face. But you've got the monster image on one side, and then on the back, you've got quite a bit of information about the monster. I'm not really going to be using any of that information once I use the challenge rating. Like once I check the challenge rating and I go, okay, yeah, that's a fair encounter for my players. I'm not really going to use what's on the back of this card because it's all overkill for the ICRPG mods that I'm using. It's quite frankly too much information. I don't need it all. So I'm going to have to come up with some kind of an on-the-fly mental algorithm that can convert all of this into just the stuff I need and sort of like mentally blank out the rest. And that way I can get through a game and not get bogged down staring at the back of these cards while still using them as a nice little visual aid for my players. And because I want them to be a visual aid for my players, I took some, I should say 2 other things that I did was this little stand that this tablet is in. I made this. This is made out of plywood, you can see. And it's just one piece of plywood cut on the top at a 15-degree angle. Those 2 pieces doweled down. You can barely see the dowels. I tried using some dark red mahogany stain, but plywood is not meant to be stained, and I let it sit for too long, so it got very dark. But that little slit right there, I measured out to be the exact thickness of this tablet. So when I take this tablet and I slot it in there, I get this nice little perfect viewing angle, and I've got my stylus and I can plug it in on the top if I want to there. And I measured the depth of it exactly so it doesn't block any of the screen. It's just as much of it that is bezel gets blocked by the wood, and that's it. So I made that, and then I took one of the rounds. I also made Bryant, my good friend, Bobaflex, made him a gaming tabletop for his apartment because he sort of took over his family's condo now. So that's his domicile. And so he has a little round bar height table that's not really good for gaming. So I built him a tabletop that sits on top of it and sort of secures in place with some 2x4s. So now he has a 4x5 gaming tabletop with cup holders and nice surface and stuff like that to play games on. So I took that over to his house. And when I got home, I wanted to make a little stand for these cards here. So I took one of those rounds and I sanded it down and I stained it with that same mahogany stain, but because it was real wood and because I stained it quickly, it actually came out kind of nice. And this is going to be my little visual aid for creatures on the table. I'm just going to stick them in this and put them on the table, and there they'll stand. So from a player's perspective, like if you were a very tall player or you were standing at the table instead of sitting for some reason, you would see me here. I would have my dice over here to the side. I would have maybe a creature or some creatures that we're currently interacting with. Maybe I'd have my spare creature cards just sitting back here behind the tablet. And this is my whole setup. That's all I need. I can roll dice back here, off to the side, whatever. And this is my whole setup. So then other players will have their character sheet. That's another thing I wanted to mention that I skipped over. Working with converting 5th edition character sheets into ICRPG character sheets, most characters go from between 3 and 5 pages at level 0 to 1 page. And that's without losing any information. At least any pertinent information. There's a million fields of data on most character sheets that just you never reference, or they never get used, or you think you're going to care and then you don't care because you don't have time to care because it'll just bog the whole game down. And so you ignore it. And then you end up with a bunch of space on your character sheet that's just unused. And so both Bryant's 5-page character sheet, he's playing a Tiefling Bard, I believe, that got converted to a 1-page. And then Sawyer, our other friend, who is playing a Tortle Monk, that got converted from 3 pages into a 1-page character sheet. So everything just goes right down to a 1-page character sheet, which is nice. And I've already got a world map worked up, and I've already got most of a master plot worked up. I'm going to come up with maybe like a 10-session campaign, just, full arc, beginning to end, super bad guy, and we're done. And we'll see how it goes. But anyways, yeah, this is what I've been up to. A couple new games, new gaming controller, building stuff out of wood, prepping for an RPG, and just been busy. But other than that, I will definitely be getting back and learn how to play Brass Birmingham properly. Haven't played it yet, though. But other than that, I'll be getting back into the swing of things very soon. I've felt bad about not posting, but I'm not going to post just to post when what I post might not be worth posting. Like, I don't want to post crap, although this could be crap. Who knows? Anyways, hope you guys are doing good, and I will see you soon with some more, planned content. Other than that, have a good night.